Call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Bob?
Here.
Jeff?
Here.
Kurt?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Randy?
Here.
Jay?
Here.
Taylor?
Still here, Taylor?
That was quick.
Well, excused, I guess, unless he pops back on. Give him 1 second. Is that you, Taylor? Hello, hello. Okay, we'll just continue along with the six of us. Now it's time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, that brings us to item 3 on the agenda, and that's approval of minutes. We have minutes from the October 15th meeting of 2018, the November 5th meeting of 2018, December 3rd and 17th meetings of 2018, and January 7th of 2019. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Mucci, I believe, and seconded by Member Stanton Gregor. If there's no changes, we will leave them as presented. I see no hands coming up, so that's what we'll do. And item 4, amendment and approval of tonight's meeting agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Walter. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we remove from the agenda items 15, C, D, E, F, G, and H, and again deal with those in line with the budget calendar that we agreed to at the last meeting.
That's 15,
Those are all budget items.
right, C, D, E, F, G, and H.
Yes, C, D, E, F, G, and H.
Okay, is there a second to that amendment? So move. Or that's a second. So discussion on the amendment. Member Walter.
I'd like to also add one thing here. I see Ren's in the audience, so I would like to, under assembly discussion items, is talk about the Troll Bridge out at Sandy Beach.
Okay, remind me when we get there, but thank you.
Yep.
And if you'd like to, Ren, I've looked at your letter you put up here for us. If you'd like to speak to this earlier, instead of waiting until the last of the meeting, you could come up under person's views. Renee.
Whatever works for you, I'll save for your discussion, so if it works better to hear it
Okay.
earlier or
All right.
later, either way is fine.
Your testimony, if you want to testify, it would be approved, appreciated earlier on at that visitors.
that's fine.
Yeah, not visitors. I'll get it right eventually. Okay, persons to be heard. Is there any other member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be voting against this amendment. I mean, as far as I was in my absence, it sounded like the city manager was looking for direction on a couple of these items for sure. I'm sure we all heard from the police chief about filling the sergeant's position, and there was a few of these things that the manager needed some direction on, and without us giving any direction, he can't proceed to, I don't understand when the dialogue is going to be to fill the position for a police sergeant and add an EMT to the fire department if we're not going to talk about it until you've seen a balanced budget. Because once you've seen a balanced budget, if there's no need to cut or add, then I don't understand what we're doing here, trying to either reduce the services or hours to certain places. I mean, that discussion needs to happen at the front end of this discussion, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, if we don't at least have a discussion, a public discussion on these sooner than later, then I'm afraid we're not going to have the discussion at all. So,
Thank you. Member Lynn?
Yeah, the reason I put that out there is for that right now we have no idea what our revenue stream is coming in from the state. And as the budget director told us, we have probably $500,000 that is very high risk of losing. The budget discussion, and that really frames in my mind what I'd be willing to vote on in terms of cuts and or reductions or additions. Until that happens, which won't be till in line with the budget part here, I'd have to vote no on everything because I don't have enough information. I think that the manager laid out the pros and cons of each item, and I think he did a very good job of that. I don't think I need any more information at this point. What I need to know is what our revenue stream is going to be, and we won't know that for a while.
Member Walhitter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm along the same lines as Bob, but I think we're going to know a lot more information tonight after Governor Dunleavy gets done with his State of the State speech, and that's why I'm a little uncomfortable to let the horse out of the barn right now and fill in different positions until we see exactly what Dunleavy's cut up his sleeve. So that's why I'll be voting yes for these.
Okay, thank you. Member Stan Greger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No argument for Member Lynn's position by any stretch. There are too many unknowns on both the state and federal level in terms of what we'll be dealing with on a local level in terms of money. That said, I echo Member Minucci's point as far as starting this discussion early. There's some pretty significant things in there. Like, off the top of my head, one concern is, for the record, I very much support the idea of a police sergeant position. I think it's, I don't need to be pitched on that anymore. Jim's framed a good argument. The hospital wrote a good letter. I mean, I'm on board. That said, let's say Dunleavy takes a whole pile of jail funding away, and we're, for lack of a better way to phrase it, totally up the creek. And we've hired this person, and now we're firing them because they're the junior sergeant, and that's a terrible way to do business also. If I'm going to put a fine point on it, I feel like there's some value in the discussion on some of these topics as far as us fleshing out as an assembly what's important to us. We're going to be doing reductions. Where would they make sense if we need to do them? I don't feel like they need to be a line item vote right now as far as putting in the budget, but I'd kind of like to keep them on there, even after we discuss them for a little bit, if it ends up being a move to postpone it to a later date. I see value in the discussion, I guess, is where I'm coming from at this point.
Any other discussion? Member Minucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I honestly think that the community is looking for us for some direction. I mean, if we're going to sit up here and wait for the governor to tell us what we're going to get without having our priorities straightened out, then there's really no reason to talk about any of this stuff. We can just let it all go. If we get a balanced budget, that'll be great, and then we don't have to worry about cuts or that kind of stuff. But I think the community expects us to kind of have a discussion when we're all here. Last year, the process was we waited until we had a balanced budget, and then if you had an addition or a subtraction to the budget, you would have it, you'd bring it up to the assembly, and the assembly would vote yay or nay. And it just seemed to me that was a little backward. It just seemed like we should be talking about whether or not we want to fill the police sergeant's position. And if we don't want to fill it, then what are our options? Are we going to start looking at less than 24/7 coverage by the police department? Whether or not we're going to look at a firefighter EMT3. Is that where we want to go, or do we want to have a EMT2 that could be a training officers? I think the community service thing, you know, those requests aren't due till March 15th. I can wait for those, but I think those community services need to be aware that there might be cuts to their funding. The assisted living, we're not asking for a lot there. We're just asking for a consultant to, you know, at least to go out to find out what it would cost to entertain or hire a consultant to look at Mountain View Manor assisted living operations to see if it's making any sense or if we need to change how that operation is going. The department head pay increases. I mean, we've been talking about that for a couple of years, and I think we need to sort out how we're going to proceed on that. And you know, if we wait until April and May, or whenever the budget comes out, I think we're doing a disservice to the community. I think discussion about eliminating snow removal outside Service Area 1 needs to get at least talked about. do we want to start looking at the roads that aren't part of the borough, outside service area 1, to see who should be taking care of those? Should the private owners be taking care of those? Should they be plowing those on their own? And, there's several questions about that, about the emergency services out there, but if we're not going to have the conversation, then the meeting will be real short, and I guess we don't really have to talk about a lot of stuff, and we just have to wait to see what the governor tells us we're going to get, and just go from there. But I'm going to be voting against the amendment.
So is there any other assembly members with thoughts on this? I agree with Member Lynn on this, and we talked about it just as a discussion item. We kicked it around at the last meeting, and we decided to, I don't want to use, I guess, kick it down the road, kick the can, but until the budget time. So now they got put on the agenda as action items, so that's what we're talking about with this amendment, is to amend the agenda to remove those. I don't have enough information without knowing where the legislature is coming from. There's talk about, jail funding reductions and PERS liability increases to the municipalities, and all of those are big money items for the borough. And I feel I need a better sense of what kind of money we're going to be getting before I could make a decision on any of these and then have to change them in April. The legislature is going to supposedly get done in 90 days, but I don't think they can even talk about the PERS situation in 90 days, so we'll see what happens, but I think, we need to wait, so that's my opinion. If there's no other discussion, we'll ask the clerk to call the roll on removing these items 15C, D, E, F, G, and H from the agenda this evening.
Okay. Were we also adding the discussion item, or is it just going under visitors' views for the 12?
Just the ones that Member Lynn presented to us, C, D, E, F, G, and
Okay.
H.
All right. Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
No.
Jeff?
No.
Okay, it passes 4-2 with the members Stanton, Gregor, and Mucci voting against it, so we will take those items off the agenda this evening as we move forward. Is there any other amendments to tonight's meeting agenda, or do we just move forward with the agenda as amended? Clerk, call the roll for moving forward as amended.
Jeff?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to move forward with the agenda as amended with Member Mucci voting no. That brings us forward to public hearings. There are none listed this evening. Item 6 on the agenda this evening, bid awards. There's no bid awards. And item 7, persons to be heard related to items on the agenda. Is there anybody who would like to speak to that? Ms. Steiner, if you would like to.
Well, I thought it was not related to items.
You're correct. Thank you for
I
catching
mean, I'd be
that.
happy to speak, but
John Hope, you wanted to say something?
Hi, I'm John Hogue. I'm representing myself and Don Koenigs. Most of you have the written handout that we have already presented, urging you to move forward and change the way that assembly members are voted upon, so that's by individual position. Somehow I've got this fantasy that in a democracy, whoever gets elected should say they receive 50% of the vote and people were voting for them as a preference. And as you all know, you may be faced at some point with some very hard decisions on the budget. And I think it's important that for future elections that people understand who's for what or who's against what. And I think that would add to participation in the elective process for the Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Okay, is there any other visitor, or is there any other persons in the audience that has items unrelated or related to items on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to item 8. Persons to be heard with items unrelated to the agenda.
Hi, I'm Catherine Schneider, and I have a letter that I'd like to share with you. Petersburg has worked diligently and creatively over the years to create a wonderful range of recreation and trail opportunities. First, thank you to all who have made Petersburg a wonderful place to get out, explore, play, and share with our family and friends. Second, I would like to take a few minutes of your time to raise a safety issue concerning the Troll Bridge. The Troll Bridge is the second bridge from Sandy Beach on the City Creek Trail. I see the Troll Bridge as a safety hazard and liability issue due to the bridge's deck, which is 4 feet above the creek, the intermittent slippery wood decking, and the lack of handrails. While it may be unlikely or infrequent that someone will fall off the Troll Bridge, the consequences of someone falling off this bridge could be severe injury. Part of risk management is balancing the likelihood of an accident with the consequences of an accident. Another part is designing trails and bridges that are consistent with the current recreation use, the setting, such as a city park versus wilderness, and established safety standards. Since the Troll Bridge was built in 2009, the City Creek Trail has been reconstructed from a dirt path to a wide gravel trail. The trail and the first bridge built along the trail has been rebuilt to safety and American Disability Act standards. The improved trail has allowed a broader range of people to use the trail and the bridge. I have talked to many people in the borough and in the community about my concern. Some agree about the safety concerns and some don't. Whether they agree with me or not, it seems like we all cherish the magic and the beauty of the Troll Bridge. Therefore, I'm asking you to set up a process to review the safety concerns with the Troll Bridge and to work with interested people in the community to find ways to maintain the magic of the Troll Bridge while addressing the need for improvements to the bridge structure given the safety hazard and the liability concerns. I look forward to working with you and others in the community in finding solutions to address these safety concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Ren. A question for the manager. Is that bridge taken care of, or that trail taken care of by Parks and Rec with help through the PIA program?
Correct.
So
it's a combination of both. I think the bridge is primarily our staff, and the trails beyond there are PIA.
So how would we proceed forward with this to address this potential safety issue? What's your thought?
Yeah. I think it would be worthwhile asking some folks, in the community if they want to, kind of talk through it. Ren's right. I mean, this is one of those things that people have a love-hate. As many people that are concerned about the safety, there are people that don't want it touched, that it's kind of Petersburg. So, I think let's throw it back to the community. Let's let them talk about it and see if there's potential changes that could be made that keep the feeling of the Troll Bridge but also making it safer for folks that are concerned about that. I mean, maybe Chandra could, through her friends of Parks and Rec, scare up some folks that might be interested. I'm just throwing stuff out. I don't know. But it's clearly one of those issues that we don't want to fight about, but there's opinions on both sides of it that people are very interested and very concerned about, one way or the other.
Okay, well, last week it was the first time I've been on that trail, so it was a neat experience. But okay, well, thanks, Ren, for your testimony. We'll see where it goes. Remember Miyuki?
Also, just as you try to educate yourself about this issue, I did finally found a publication that addresses trail bridges in a way that I could understand, and that talks about different types of code and all. And I will leave a copy with whoever you want me to, but I would suggest, that it's hard to summarize this up in 3 points, so I think it would be worth, at least some people becoming more aware of the options and how you make a decision on what is appropriate for the setting.
Okay, thank you, Ren. Can you leave that with the clerk then? And Jeff, remember Miyuki, you had a question of?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Were we going to talk about this later tonight, or is this?
It's got put on as a discussion item.
Then I'll wait till then.
So I guess we get it. Okay, back to persons to be heard with items unrelated to the agenda this evening. Is there any other people in the audience? Okay, seeing none. Brings us to 9, board, commission, and committee reports. There's nothing there. There's nothing listed under the consent agenda. Report of other officers. We were supposed to have a presentation on the census, but that was canceled tonight due to fog in Juneau. So we'll see if that gets rescheduled. And under the mayor's report, pretty short. There was a discussion brought up late last week, and by the Wrangell mayor, and related to lake levels on the SEPA system, and Tyee in particular. So he contacted me, and then manager had a discussion with him, and SEPA was involved in the discussion. And what had happened was we were, sending power from Tyee to Ketchikan, and that's all within the power sales agreement. And the lake's got a little lower than historic level, but after the discussion was started, the CEO from SEPA sent this letter, and it's on the agenda. I don't know if everybody read it. I don't want to read it word for word, but it's available on the website as well under the agenda. But what Trey did, the CEO from SEPA, is he talked to the Ketchikan mayor and Ketchikan Public Utilities, and they're all in favor of doing what they can to make sure that the northern interconnected communities, Wrangell and Petersburg, don't have to burn diesel. So what they're going to do is, Ketchikan was scheduled, and if I'm wrong, Carl, correct me on any of this, please. They were scheduled to start a diesel burn on Friday, and this morning they said they could possibly even start as early as Thursday, and then that would they want to bring the Swan Lake level up to, they're going to draw it down to 280, I think, something like that, Carl, and try to get it back up to 295. And that should, hopefully, with a little bit of rain coming our way, and the weather prediction that Tyee will stay the same level, and we won't have to burn any diesel. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And during this conversation, the manager and I had a conversation with Trey at SEPA, and I asked him if he'd be willing to come up at some point and talk to the assembly, or the community, if they wanted to come to the assembly meeting, and he said he would. He will come up on February 4th. Come in on the morning plane, attend the noon meeting, and then fly back home. So if anybody develops any questions for him, and by then we'll have another couple of weeks of time to see what the lakes are doing. So if there's any questions, I'll try to answer them, or Carl probably could, or Bob. Do you have any input?
No, I think you covered it well. Thank you.
Okay. This wasn't listed on the mayor's report. Plan dates for the February meetings. Steve, Member Lynn, and myself will be at AML in Juneau, and the conversation, I had the conversation with Member Norheim before the meeting started while he was on the phone, and it sounds fairly unlikely that he will be here, and if he's out on the crab grounds, probably won't be able to call in. So that would be 3 assembly members gone. How does the assembly feel? Should we move that meeting from the 19th, or does the four want to go on with it? Member Walter?
I'll be gone also, Mr. Mayor.
Well,
My
there's
mom's
a good
turning 90,
potential.
so I'll be down at her birthday.
Pardon me?
My mom's turning 90, so I'll be at her birthday.
Okay. And I don't know if this was just a thought I had on the way to the meeting this evening. Do you think we could just, not have a second meeting in February? Or, what do you think is pressing?
That's the call of the assembly. I don't think there's anything pressing other than budget, and the budget calendar, if we're following that, doesn't occur until later in March and April. So I suppose what we could do is play it by ear, assume it's not, if the assembly votes that way, assume we're not going to have the meeting, and if something dire comes up, then we get back in touch with you and say, hey, we've got to reschedule a special meeting for something. But I can't see that happening.
I mean, if I get back on the following Monday, the 25th, it could be on the 26th, or it could be on the 25th, even though, it'd be 6 days later if that's the wish of this. But I just wanted to throw, my thoughts out there and see if there's any other thoughts, when are you going to return, Member Walter?
I believe around the 21st, so I could make that meeting.
Okay.
On the 26th.
Do we want to temporarily schedule a meeting for the Monday, the 25th, for our second meeting? Does that fit in with people's,
That'd be fine. I'm fine with it either way, Mr. Mayor.
okay, and that would be an evening meeting. Can we do that, Danielle? Okay, perfect. And that would be the second meeting of the month, so I'm assuming we would be good with having it at 6 p.m.? Okay, thanks. And that is it for my mayor's report. And that brings us to the manager's report.
Thank you, sir. Please help us in welcoming Joe Kupernick as our new facilities supervisor at Parks and Rec. He has moved here from Colorado. He officially started Monday, January 7th, and is learning fast. Also, Brad Mason has started as the new facilities maintenance position. He and his wife have been in town since April. I believe she works up at the hospital. Lots of activities at Parks and Rec. Youth volleyball has started. Grades 3 through 8 are still open for registrations. Swim lessons are also open for registration, and thanks for everyone who enjoyed the Capture the Flag event at the ball field on the 19th. Lifeguard class on the 31st of January, February 1st, and the 8th of February from 8 to 5. We have 2 spaces left. Registration is now open. Class costs $135. And kind of a new thing, which is really good, we're excited to announce that this class is held in conjunction with the Petersburg Medical Center staff. 4 physical therapists have agreed to become lifeguards to create more opportunities for the hospital to bring over long-term care residents and physical therapy clients where they provide their own lifeguards, which will be a big help to us. We have some fun new fitness class opportunities to mix into our awesome assortment of classes. Kickboxing, spin bike, senior strength training, circuit training, lunchtime yoga, vinyasa with Joan, mat Pilates with Bridget, bench step with Marva, flex fit with Alice. Must pre-register for that. Yoga and strength training with Karen, strong and kids Zumba with Andrea, and water aerobics with Chandra. We are seeking new instructors for some fitness, arts, and after-school programs. If you're interested in teaching, we can probably have arranged space for you. Please see Kaylee or email her for more information at kthornson@petersburgak.gov. Focus up there, we had some issues with the HVAC system and working on the pool systems. Kind of a real big thanks to Joe Bertagnoli and Dan Tate for offering their time and assistance in troubleshooting the HVAC issue to get that fixed for the most part. There was a new pool chemical feeder installed also that is not responding correctly with the controllers. We've ordered the parts and have figured out a solution to operate the feeders manually until the controllers are back up and running. Junior firefighter program is still going strong. They will be finishing their classes very soon and then start weekly drills. Sandy completed the DHS and AM Alaska assessment. This is completion of it allows the Borough to be eligible for Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management grants and helps the state determine the community's emergency preparedness. Sandy also completed a recertification process for our ambulance service. We are now a certified ambulance service again, and that certification is good for 2 years. Our new automated external defibrillators, or AEDs, have been programmed and distributed to replace the old ones throughout the borough departments. Of note, we added one here in this building. It's in the lobby between the 2 bathrooms. Alaska Commercial Electronics and AT&T staff and Harbor staff, completed the setting up of new security camera, server, and fiber optic Borough network update and hardware for the Harbor. New system seems to be working well. We've got one thing left to do, which is make some connections at this end so that the police department can actually see those cameras if called upon to do so in the Harbor. A reminder to everyone, the 2019 annual drive-down permits are now available through the Harbor Office. Public Works has been coordinating with the police and the Harbor Departments to clean out our vehicle impound yard, which was again kind of overflowing. A total of 16 vehicles were removed from the impound yard and hauled to the landfill for disposal. In addition, the harbor maintenance staff demoed 3 impounded vessels, and thanks to Rockies Marine and the Baylor staff for their help in that. Recent cold weather conditions have resulted in town with some frozen water services. Look like it's going to warm up, but just kind of a reminder to folks, in order to prevent this type of issue, water lines and meters should be inspected regularly, and any problems with heat tape or insulation should be repaired. Building skirting should also be kept in good repair to help retain the heat under structures where water and sewer lines are generally located. This is already out of date, but the 2019 Winter Reading Challenge, the library challenged the community to read 30,000 minutes in January. I think they're well over 100,000 now, and have set a new goal at 150,000. So I'm doing that from memory, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. As of this, over 250 people have signed up, and nearly 200 are tracking their reading. This program is sponsored by Friends of the Petersburg Library, so they killed the goal and have raised it twice since then. So we have been approved here in Petersburg for another library school intern for next summer. The 2-month-long internship is funded by the Alaska State Library. Tara is currently taking a digital stewardship class. The outcome will be a digital collection policy for the library, better stewardship of our listening project, and Petersburg Pilot Archives, as well as a framework for how to take on new digital projects. Petersburg Police Department is hiring a dispatch corrections officer. If you want to see what the position entails, please go in and see Chief Kerr. He's offering tours, and we'll talk through and show people what the job's all about and explain what the job duties are. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Is there any questions from the Assembly for the manager? Okay, seeing none. Get back to the agenda. That brings us to unfinished business. And there's an ordinance for third and final reading. This is ordinance 2018-21. This is an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2019 budget for known changes. And these changes are, if adopted, ordinance 2018-21 will use $400,000 of sanitation funds and $200,000 of sanitation's motor pool funds for the Baylor equipment replacement expenses. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this in its third and final reading. So moved. Second. Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Lynn. Discussion. Member Stan Greger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a brief conversation with Director Cotta today, and wanted to thank him for his diligent effort in not just saying we're going to replace this Baylor as is, move forward with kind of a status quo. I appreciate his vision and looking at all potential solutions for our waste disposal. And I look forward to seeing what Director Cotta brings to us in the future. I'll definitely be voting for this tonight.
Any other discussion? You know, the first two readings of this, I was kind of hesitant in approving the funding, but knowing that it's going to come back to the Assembly anyway, and we have to put out an RFP. And some of my concerns were at the last meeting that we haven't been looking at any other options. But since that meeting, the managers told me that Public Works Director Cotta has looked into the catch cans facilities a little bit, talked to them, and talked to them about what their landfill does and how they use their two balers that they have. And so hopefully he'll keep having those discussions, and when we get to the point of an RFP, we'll have options. And so I think I'll definitely be voting for this in this third reading tonight. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, ordinance 2018-21 passes unanimously. Brings us on to new business, and this is a resolution 2019-02 This is a resolution of the Petersburg Borough Assembly supporting proposed amendments to the population caps within the payment in lieu of taxes PILT formula. Excuse me. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Morrell, seconded by Member Lynn. Any discussion? Member Stan Gregor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was actually, I was listening to you on the radio today, kind of explaining what this means and the why, and I was wondering if you'd be comfortable explaining that to the public at home who may have missed it this afternoon.
Sure. Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
Actually, this came about when, and that I don't know the exact ins and outs of it, but this is what I was told in Anchorage at the AML meeting in November, that there was one community that didn't agree with the way the formula was working for smaller communities, so they filed a lawsuit and they won. And I can't remember what their payment was, and even if this all goes through Congress, we will actually maybe get a little bit of a kickback as far as in relation to that lawsuit, but if this changes the formula for communities under 5,000, it could potentially mean $95,000 more a year to Petersburg in payment in lieu of taxes if that program stays intact. Denali Borough recently passed a resolution that ours is mirroring, and I think it's a good idea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for asking. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Randy?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, Resolution 2019-02 passes unanimously. That brings us to item B under new business, and this is designated assembly seats. I'd entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Walhooter. Discussion. Would you like to...
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Give you the first crack.
No, you bet. First of all, I'd like to echo what Community Member Hogue said today. I think democracy works best when one person gets more than half the votes. I spoke to this at a different meeting, so I'll briefly repeat it. We are voting for Alaska senators, which are currently Lisa Murkowski and Dan Sullivan. Now, an opponent would run for Senator Sullivan's seat or Senator Murkowski's seat, and that provides accountability for them as representatives for Alaska. We don't see it on the ballot as Murkowski, Sullivan, and however many more, and say pick no more than two. I'd heard a concern expressed about it, things becoming potentially partisan from that or more heated. I don't share that concern. I like the idea of accountability. If someone thinks an assembly member is doing a subpar job, they can run against them, say what they think they would do better. And that in turn is better for the voting public to have a really clear compare and contrast. And that's healthier for democracy. And on a basic mathematical level, pardon me while I pull up my notes, it's also better for the voters to, if I'm a voter and we've got, let's say like last year, 6 candidates, and let's say I want 2 of them, the odds of the voter getting the candidates, the 2 they want, is a 1 in 30 probability. If I've got 2 candidates I want out of 6, there's 30 possibilities, so I've got a 1 in 30 possibility of getting who I want. And if I only vote for one of them, let's say, well, I really want this, I'm increasing my odds to 1 in 6. You take that same scenario with, say, 3 people going for 1 seat, 3 for the other. As a voter, you've got a 1 in 3 chance of getting a candidate you like or that you support. And I think that also is better for democracy because it keeps, as Community Member Hogue said, it makes for a more engaged electorate. We feel like we have more control of our outcomes. So because of that, I hope the Assembly sees fit to approve this so that, in short, again, because I think it'd be much better for our local democracy to potentially increase participation, and also, as I opened with, to see one candidate get 50% of the votes. Thank you.
Okay, before I ask for any more Assembly input, I'd just like to clarify that this isn't a vote taking place tonight by the Assembly to approve this, and it's going to be a done deal. This is just a direction if this passes the assembly tonight, for Clerk Thompson to draft an ordinance to assign designated assembly seats for the election process.
Correct.
So that's what we would be doing, just to have her move forward. Then there'd be the normal 3 readings, the second reading, having a public hearing, et cetera. So is there any more discussion on this? Member Lynn?
Yeah, I would move that we direct Clerk Thompson to develop an ordinance that we could go forward with.
Okay, yeah, and that's what the motion kind of was given that permission. Member Burrell?
I can see where, I hear what you guys are saying, and how, my problem is that if you took the majority of your top 2, you know, if those 2 are seated on one seat, or even the top 3, so say 3 and 3, you could potentially end up with what the community in general wants with the 4th, you know, say the 4th person really who they would desire if it was from the way we do it now, could end up with a seat, as opposed to the popular, the 2nd or 3rd choice, which would be running against the number 1 seat in that position. Does that make any sense? And that's where I kind of have an issue with. So, you know, if your top 3 most popular votes in the current way we do it is seated in for the one position, and say your 3, 4, and 5 is on the other seat, then you're going to end up with your 4th most popular and your 1st. And that's where I have an issue with that. So I will not be voting for that.
Okay, and, you know, I'm not totally opposed to the idea. It's just, I see the clerk reached out to, I don't know, 10 other communities, and none of them from Craig, which is a smaller community than us, and Ketchikan and Ketchikan Gateway Borough, which are both larger than us, and none of them use this proposed method that you do what we do currently. I'm kind of the mind that if this was, I don't know if it should be done by ordinance, or if we want to move forward with this idea, if it should go on the ballot, so the entire populace has a chance to weigh in on if we want this. And I guess they have the opportunity, if we go through 3 readings in an ordinance, to voice their opinion. So I'm not quite sure exactly how I'm going to vote on this yet. So any other discussion? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm not really in favor of this idea. You know, I think we see lots of partisan politics in Juneau and Washington, D.C., and I'd like to kind of keep the local borough assembly seats and whatever just as welcoming as it can be, and not try. I know the goal is not to intimidate people from running, but to make it as easy as possible for people to participate. Honestly, when we're running for office, there's only a couple forums where you answer questions from the public. Even when the candidates are up here, and I mean, there's no live questions from the audience. It just comes from the KFSK, the chamber, and with pre-selected questions. It's pretty tame. The school board, I mean, the school has a forum, and they ask you direct questions. I mean, I think as an incumbent, you're always responsible for the way you voted, and those questions can be asked an incumbent candidate. I kind of like the way it is. I don't see the issue. I want to make sure we get as many people who would like to participate, and not have it get locked up in some partisan fight here at the local level. So I'll be voting no.
Any other discussion, Member Lim?
I think we need to look at it, or well, at least the way I look at it is from the voter standpoint. That I think that there's quite a number of people, myself included, who will only vote for one candidate. I think if you were to change it and look at it from the voter standpoint, I think I agree with Member Stanton Greger, is that you have much more chance of getting an individual or individuals that you would vote for. The other way, it's if you vote for both candidates in that order, you don't stand a very good chance of getting the folks that you really want. Whether or not, we only have 2 or 3 forums, but I don't think this would make any difference one way or another, and I don't think all you would have to do is designate which seat you're going to run for. It doesn't make any difference in my mind which way we go, at least in my thought process.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, will the clerk call the roll on designated assembly seats? Asking the clerk to draft a resolution.
Okay, Jeff?
No.
Mark?
No.
Bob?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Randy?
No.
Taylor, are you on the phone?
I am. I don't know for how long, but I would vote yes.
Okay, I thought I heard you clicking and clacking, so that passes with a 4-3 vote with members Nucci, Merle, and myself, Mayor Jensen, opposing it. So we'll ask the clerk to draft a ordinance, and we'll probably be a while because she's out for a few weeks on vacation.
This period, I'd say, might be the first or second meeting in March. I mean,
well before the next election, and then...
I also spoke to her, and she had mentioned kind of some stuff she'd gotten together and talking to the lawyer, so she did give me some direction to get started, so hopefully it won't be that long.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, that moves us down to item I. And I asked to have this on the agenda today, and I didn't really think there would be an issue with putting this on our capital, non-capital issues and concerns priority list, but I thought we better, it'd be best to run it by the Assembly. And this has to do with our land selection in Senate Bill 28. I've had a few conversations with Senator Stedman and his chief of staff, Randy, and our lobbyist, and they seem to think it's important that we keep on this land entitlement so it doesn't kind of get put on the bottom of the pile up there in DNR's office. So I think it'd be a good idea to add it to that. So I'd entertain a motion to approve this being put on the non-capital issue list. I guess I should have waited for a motion and had that discussion.
So move.
Thank you, Member.
Second.
Motion made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Walherter to add this to our capital issues and concerns portion of the capital projects list. Any other discussion? Member Lynn?
May I ask a couple questions? My understanding is that our original list, that was a 1,500, I think it was, or 1,600 acres. That list is going forward, and my understanding is we're supposed to hear back soon on that list. But the other acreage that was approved under SB 28, we've submitted, but we've not heard anything. Has there been any action taken on it?
I talked to Liz today about that.
Mark, do you want to?
Sure, unless you have current information.
Other than it appears that DNR is moving responsibilities around again. It sounds like the responsibility for all of this has been moved out of Juneau to Anchorage. So that's one issue. It sounds like very shortly we'll get some feedback on the first initial request. But you are correct. I don't think they have done much on the second batch. So, but
and that's what Liz clarified for me today when I went and talked to her about this, and she said the first 1,400 acres is what the amount was, is their response, or their, that's not the right word for it, but that we should have an answer from them soon. And then the rest of it, who knows? But it's, for the people I talked to, they seem to think it's important to keep after this. It doesn't sound like there's any concerns from the senator's office with the new administration opposing any of this, but there's some changes in command in DNR, so that might be a potential stumbling block that we need to work through. So is there any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Okay. Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to item J, and that's an economic development work session request. So I guess it's an action item, so I'd entertain a motion to come up with a time for a work session to be held on economic development.
So move.
Second.
Well, motion was made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Walter, excuse me. Well, Member Mucci, you requested this on the agenda. Would you like to speak to it first, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. So, over the last couple of months, we've heard about economic development in town and whether or not we wanted to encourage the cruise ship industry to increase their presence here. And it just got me to thinking that perhaps it's a time to talk at the assembly level about what we'd like to see done regarding economic development. You know, my goal here was to maybe sit down with the Chamber of Commerce and find out what they're doing in the borough for economic development, and to have at that meeting members of the Petersburg Economic Development Council or Committee, and just lay out who is doing what. In years past, we've had members of the Chamber go to boat shows and trade organizations in South Petersburg and this, that, and the other, and I don't know if that's getting done anymore. If it's not getting done, then we need to sort out if we're going to continue doing that or if somebody is going to do that, unless we want to stop participating in those kind of things. And just kind of see what's going on, you know, have Liz give us a rundown of what's going on in economic development in town and get some of her thoughts about what she thinks is happening in the community and around the region. So I think it's pretty important topic, and I'm just trying to find a time to chat about it some evening. Thank you.
Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two things with that. One, if someone could update me, is there another scheduled meeting more specifically on tourism industry and economic development? And we have a citizens group who's taken some initiative there. What's the current status of that? Someone could update?
To my knowledge, what's going on, and I think it was the Chamber, and I think with PEDC, but mainly the Chamber, is forming a committee. And they're looking for 15 people. I've got this information at the last PEDC meeting, and there will be another one scheduled for this Thursday, so that the discussion will be had some more. It'll be expanded on. They have 7 people interested, and I think the way they did it, they came up with 5 people. That's a steering committee, and then those 5 are going to appoint the other 5. And I'm not sure if that was advertised. In fact, I don't think it was actually advertised in the paper and or on the radio station. That was one of my concerns, so I mentioned that to PDC director today. But that is going forward, and that's when they'll be full. And then if they got a committee of 15, they were going to each.
It's in process, though.
It seems like it's in process.
Got it. Thank you. And my follow-up, I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. And the second one, Member Mucci, would it be beneficial in lieu of a work session, and I'm not sure what your process is, to have Liz or PEDC come and give us kind of an update presentation or an assembly meeting, like as a part of it, like we do with the hospital or other department heads like we've done in the past? I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be helpful, but I'd also like to find out what the Chamber of Commerce is doing for economic development in town. So maybe at that same meeting, we could invite the Chamber rep or somebody from the Chamber of Commerce to tell us what they're doing for economic development in Petersburg, and specifically just some of the particulars that they're doing, and if they're not, just sort out so that we can remedy them if they're not doing what needs to get done here.
Okay,
yeah, that's fine. That's a good start.
Okay, Member Stanton Gregor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to echo what Member Mucci just said. I think that would, for me in my process, be a good start to kind of get a lay of the land of what these organizations are up to. I know, because if we end up in a work session, I'd be able to focus my thoughts and energies more specifically to some topics. So for me, that'd be a good jumping off point, having them come and talk to us at a meeting. Thanks.
Okay, Member Mucci, you have another comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So could we invite them for the meeting on the first meeting in February?
I would think we could. I don't know how far along they'll be in the process of this forming this committee, but maybe there's only going to be one more PDC meeting before that. They're monthly on the third Thursday at noon. But where we're at here on the agenda and in the process is these are all on our action items. So we have a motion to set up a scheduled work session. So if we want to, in lieu of a work session, invite PDC and Chamber of Commerce to come to an assembly meeting and give a presentation. Maybe we should not come up with a time for this particular work session at this point. I mean, does that make sense? Since that,
From a parliamentary perspective, yes.
that's what
follow you, Mr.
that's the
Mayor.
way I'm looking at it.
Yes.
Parliamentary procedure process. Member Lynn?
Yeah, may I ask a question to go along with this?
Sure.
When we invite them, was your intent also then to have the particular items that we'd like to have addressed at the same time, so that we cover the information which you're really after?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I could certainly put together a list of some of the questions and concerns I have and get them to the city manager, the city clerk, and they could forward them to both organizations, some of the questions that I had. I could do that.
Okay, so I guess at this point, I'm going to ask the clerk to call a roll for schedule. We don't even have a time. Let's pick a
For the
date.
work session?
Yeah, for tomorrow. Perfect. And to have this work session. Clerk, call a roll.
Kurt?
Yes.
What we're doing is you're voting for a meeting day after tomorrow.
Oh, day after tomorrow. Is that enough time? No.
Well, no, what we're doing is we're in the process where these are all action items, and we've had a motion to vote on a time for scheduling a work session on economic development. And since we've just decided that we'd invite PDC and the Chamber of Commerce to come to the next assembly meeting on the 4th and give a presentation, we're not scheduling a meeting, but for parliamentary procedure clarification, we need to vote, and to vote no would mean we're not going to have a meeting, and we're not.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah. I thought we were voting to invite him to the assembly meeting. Okay, then no.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sorry. I guess that clarified it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Jeff?
No.
Bob?
No.
Taylor?
No.
Mark?
No.
Randy?
No.
Jay?
No.
Okay, so in lieu of that work session, and we can always schedule one after our visit from PDC and the Chamber at our February 4th meeting. Excuse me. The next item on the agenda is K, Planning for the Future Ideas Work Session. I'd entertain a motion to vote for, come up with a date for that.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Stan Greger. Member Mucci, you asked to have this on the agenda. Would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back in January of 2018, we had several meetings. I think a couple before that, and the last one was on the 18th, in this council chamber, or the assembly chambers, to hear from the public about what they thought we should do for reducing the budget. And our comments to them, to the community, was, well, we'd get together and go over these things and see if there was any council will to either follow up on these or just say we didn't think it was a good idea at this time. And I think while we're in the budget process, I think we need to finalize that commitment to the community about that we're looking at their suggestions and we're taking them to heart. So I'm just trying to follow up.
Member Stan Greger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, for those listening at home, you may or may not remember that we had chosen or decided each assembly person to grab several of these that we felt were important and bring them to that meeting. And we discussed having it, I believe, back in September, end of summer, and obviously no one had put that on agenda as an action item. So I think it'd probably be prudent for us to, even visit in the immediate future, schedule this out so that we can follow up with the people of Petersburg who took time out of their lives to give us some very specific feedback of how they could, of how we could help this community. So I'm definitely open to picking a time to do this.
Any other discussion? Member Bucci, did you have any kind of a time frame that you were thinking of, or just?
It would be nice to do it in January or February. I know we have the 28th is available, which is next Monday or so, next Monday. And then there's a couple dates in February. I know we have a meeting on the 4th, but we could also do it on the 11th or on the 11th too. So I'm flexible.
Okay, I guess we'd have to just make a motion. Just for FYI, I will be, I think I leave on the 11th, get back on the 14th. And I agree with what Member Stanton Greger his comments when he spoke, that we did have the 3 meetings and people came out and they did presented some ideas, and we've talked about going over those, so I think it's our duty to at least discuss some of those topics. Any other ideas for a time? I mean, the 11th works. I mean, I just won't be here, but
I won't be here, so the 28th would be better for me.
Okay, what date can we do a poll like the clerk had been doing?
The online poll?
Online poll to see, and then just present that at, well, when's our next meeting? Is the 4th, so that's almost 2 weeks away.
Could we do it like, I'm just thinking out loud, Mr. Mayor, if you more or less starting soon through February, through the month of February, and see what we come up with for whether most of us can be there, would make sense, whether it be 4 or 5,
Does that work?
The more of us there, the better, obviously, for the community.
Yeah, does that work for you, Member Bucci? I know you want it sooner than later. Would you rather have something potentially by the middle of February?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I thought people were going to be out of town.
Well,
I mean, I'd like to have it when people are in town, obviously.
that's true. I will be in town on the 15th of February. I will be in town the whole first week of February, from the 3rd to the 8th. I'm just saying my schedule. And I know Member Lynn, Steve, and I, and Taylor will be gone from the 12th on, potentially to the 20th.
Probably a little before the 12th, weather dependent.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
About the 15th? Of February, that is, obviously.
This thing goes for 7 days.
Right.
I am good for any time in January. I know that's pretty soon, but just so you guys know.
Well, thanks, Member Bucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So how about January 28th?
It's a Monday.
Yes, next Monday.
It's next Monday.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, and so will the assembly members seated at the diocese today be here on the 28th?
I would, depending on the time, I would most likely not.
Okay. Member Walter, you'll be gone?
Here. No, I'll be
You'll be here, okay. What time would work for you, since we have it whittled down to a day, potentially?
I don't think my availability, it's an office day for myself.
Right. How about evening would, I'm just sorry to interrupt, but
Not a problem.
evening might be better if we're trying to get public input, so we get people that have a job. So I know sometimes you have evening engagements too.
I'd be 50-50 on the evening. I couldn't say either way for sure at this point. I apologize.
Well, no reason to apologize.
Would Tuesday be any different for
If you
you?
move it
Because
a day.
sometimes Mondays are tough
Can you
because
move it a
everybody's
day?
getting back.
Would that make a difference?
Would the 29th or 30th work? Does that work for you, Member Mucci? I mean, it's since Member Greger said
30th would be great. I could do the 30th in the evening.
Sounds good. 6:30, give people time if they want to attend to get home from work, and is that time acceptable?
Do that.
Okay, so
Work till we count.
we have a time for a proposed work session for planning for the future, and it's January 30th at 6:30 p.m. So will the clerk call the roll?
Mr. Mayor?
Okay,
Member Mucci had a...
Was it the 29th or the 30th?
30th.
30th.
30th, okay. Just wanted to make sure.
I believe that was the...
Wednesday the 30th.
Yep. Okay, so that is what we're voting on, Wednesday the 30th at 6:30 for a work session to discuss planning for the future. Ideas? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Okay, Kurt,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Brandy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Taylor.
Taylor, sorry, you on board?
Yeah, I just couldn't hear my name, sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah, no problem. Okay, thank you. So that is scheduled, and we will advertise accordingly. Next item on the agenda is L, solid waste / recycling / compost in work session. I'd entertain a motion to schedule this work session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Morrell. Member Mucci, again, since you wanted us on the, asked this on the agenda, would you talk first, please?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just looking to, have a work session regarding those topics, the solid waste, recycling, and the composting issues in Petersburg. But it would probably be good for us to, in addition to those three subjects, maybe it'll give us a time to hear some ideas about where we're headed for the solid waste world. I know there's been different discussions on different options up there, but I know people have asked about the recycling program and solid waste and the composting, and I'd just like to hear what the community's thinking and like to see what we can do to address some of these concerns. So that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. Member Stanton Gregor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is more of like a point of clarification, I guess, with Member Mucci. Like, I completely agree with what you're saying in terms of hearing from the community, 100%. But a work session doesn't allow for that. That's, so I'm a little hung up on how we get to that place through that venue, I guess, is what I'm saying. The work session is us talking, maybe with department heads, et cetera, and it doesn't allow for public comment. So I'm trying to find a way to get to what you're saying, I guess.
Well, I have a bunch of questions regarding solid waste, recycling, and composting, and I suppose I could just go in and talk to Director Cotta about them, but, I know there's some other folks in the community who have questions and concerns, and I'm trying to find a good way to get some of these questions answered so that when we get ready to either purchase a new baler, that we at least address some answers with our solid waste, how that's all going, and maybe trends, and the recycling program, and where we think we might be headed that way. So I'm just trying to find an answer to a lot of questions that I have and questions that I keep hearing from the community. So I'm just looking for a venue to get those questions answered.
Member Lynn, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm still puzzled. I agree with the idea of getting more information, but how you do that and so forth, I'm still kind of hung up. I don't know. How do we hear from the community on that whole issue? And there's a lot of parts to this thing. Do you want to take it all in one lump and one big bite, or do you want to take it in parts? That's another side of this coin. There's a lot of work involved with this if you take on all parts at one time. Tremendous amount of work if you're going to do look at it in some depth.
It is going to be a subject, a topic that we're going to have to discuss at some point, is where we want to go with our garbage collection, whether we're going to stay in the recycling maybe this conversation will come out when we come back with a proposed RFP and some kind of a plan for our sanitation department or what we're going to do. And I haven't been involved in many of these discussions, but I think Utility Director Hagerman has been on the CSWA board for years, and in your estimation, Mr. Hagerman, you could talk about this for weeks, couldn't you? So you're familiar with what's been discussed in the recent past in Southeast.
That's true, Mr. Mayor, and I would happily participate in whatever kind of venue came about. Chris has been doing a great job getting up to speed. I do have some history, of course, in the regional approach to solid waste that I'd be happy to share.
So how can we do this in conjunction with moving forward with our sanitation department and get public comment? Do you have any, if we have a work session, is that correct? We can't have any public comment in them, or do we just have a public meeting, or what's the protocol? What's your thought on that, Member Stengberger?
Well, I think there's a couple of ways to go. I'm just thinking out loud. One solution-based approach that I think could be effective for this would be, so we get RFPs back and then schedule a special meeting about several pieces of that. I personally feel all those in one work session is going to get us lost in the weeds. It's because I could talk about composting for 3 hours. I think there's a lot of potential there. And I'd want to parse it out a little bit, I guess, like focus on solid waste, recycling, both. I think those two go hand in hand really well together. And then composting is slightly separate. In short, I mean, I don't know where to go with this. Maybe a special session when we get closer to moving forward on some Baylor thing? I don't know.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm about having public discussions to try to figure out where we're going to go. If we have some kind of if we come to some kind of resolution at the end of the meeting, the public input, but I mean, just to talk about it doesn't do me much good. Remember, Lynn?
Again, I'm talking out loud here, too, is that, would it be helpful if we took one bite of that each time and just at least had a presentation on the parts of it, where we're at, what the potential is, and just let it so the public could hear, and then maybe have one bigger meeting later on to put it all together. I don't know, I'm thinking out loud again. There's just a lot to this whole issue.
Any other member, Mick, you have another thought?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, if we want to chop it up into a couple meetings, but I'd like to at least get the conversation started or have some report from the Public Work Director, from Director Cotta, about the recycling program and solid waste, and just kind of see some of the trends that we're looking at so that we can make an informed decision if we want to either increase garbage rates or change the recycling program. But the conversation needs to happen, and I want to make sure it happens when we're in town and have the opportunity to ask questions, as opposed to after everybody's. I know we're in and out of town a lot, but this is the time of year to have those work sessions to kind of get more information to the assembly. And while the public might not be able to participate, they can certainly hear what's out there. And I'd rather do it sooner than later, and I'm perfectly happy to cut it up into a couple of work sessions.
Danielle, you have some input on the topic?
I had a question since it's kind of me here while Debbie's gone. Just for my clarification, with work sessions, and I know how important all this is, and there's the community really cares about recycling and composting and all of that. But what's our goal? Because I know when we have important things, it could go on and on and on, and we'll never get not all the information is ever going to get out. So if you guys could help me, if we're going to plan a work session of what do we want out of it, are there 3 main goals, are there 5, so that we hit all our key points, all the important stuff comes out, but we don't take up too much time, because I can't see, too long, it gets too much information, too short, and we miss everything. Just for me, it'd be helpful.
Member Michi?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I appreciate those comments. And I think a good idea when we do these work sessions is just limit it in its time. I mean, it shouldn't be an open-ended meeting. It should be an hour and a half. I'm just trying to get a better sense of what's going on with our solid waste in the community and what's going on with the recycling program. I mean, we're going to be looking at those things are going to drive the conversation in town for a while, and I want to have the conversation about what are we looking at. There's been talk about maybe opening up the landfill. Is that the direction we want to go, or do we want to change the way we go about recycling? And I want to have that discussion so that we can kind of get a sense of where we're headed, as opposed to not having the conversation and just letting the Chinese market dictate how we're going to recycle. I think that's kind of backward. We should be kind of taking care of our own garbage and dealing with it. But I just want to have the conversation. I'm more than happy I could get you a list of what I'm trying to get out of it. If that's what you need, I could certainly do that.
Okay, that would be really helpful, just so we have an idea of where we're going.
So at this point, would the assembly be more comfortable with waiting until we got more information and then trying to schedule a work session? It seems to me like what I'm getting out of this discussion should possibly be 3, like solid waste, recycling and composting done separately, so the meetings aren't too long, and you don't get lost in, the lack of interest for one thing, or getting, I don't want to say bored, but you're getting overwhelmed with the information from all three of them. And what happens in China is going to affect our solid waste and our recycling, I would think, if that's where Republic, the people we use, to send our recycling to, ship everything to China, but maybe we can be more self-sufficient too. So yeah, it would be good to have the discussion on what our options are. So what is the will of the Assembly? Do you want to hold off on this, scheduling a work session, or break it down to 3, or what's the desire? Remember Lynn?
Yeah, I think your idea of dividing it into 3 makes some sense. And I do agree with Jeff, but you got to take them one at a time, and just, if we could do that sometime in February, that'd be great. If we can schedule a time to do that, or do it as part of one of the meetings, maybe. I don't know. I don't have any strong feelings one way or another.
Is there any way we could have this, on the next meeting, I guess was my thought, on the second meeting in February, but the 25th, I guess, was the date we picked for that, and just put it on the regular agenda just to have a discussion, maybe get a presentation, maybe we can get an update as to what the current status is at that time of Petersburg Borough's solid waste and recycling. We don't compost right now, to my knowledge, and just to get an idea of what we're dealing with currently. I mean, am I making any sense? I don't know. Just, remember, Lynn?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I was going to ask, remember Mucci is he okay with that? What are you thinking?
Just, sorry for interrupting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that's fine, but I just think that the solid waste and the recycling issues are going to take a little bit of time to talk about it with the department head and the assembly, and I don't know if we can give it the just amount of time for a 5 or 10 minute report from the public works director. I mean, we could certainly give it a try, and if we have, or I have more questions, I can figure it out, but I think there's concern in the community about these issues, and I guess we could kick the can down the road more, and we can talk about it at the assembly meeting, and if we don't get our questions answered, we can take the next step, I guess.
Well, it's either that or pick a date and a time, and we'll vote to see if that's what we want to do. I mean, remember Oliver?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think Chris is going to start putting in a considerable amount of time trying to find a baler for us. What direction are we giving him, with this conversation? I mean, is he going to get something for us, that's going to do the things status quo, or is he going to look into the future and try to estimate or guess what the people of Petersburg want? Or, you can see where this is going, right? I mean, this could get really convoluted. So I trust that you've got a handle on that. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, on what would be best for this community on recycling and solid waste, what's the cheapest option that we have, and where we need to be. So we can have that conversation, I guess, but I don't know at what point we should have it if you've already ordered a baler. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Correct, but we're not to that point yet, because we passed that supplemental budget, we still have to get RFPs and go over it again. But I'm just thinking of how this discussion is going right now. I mean, we're burning up time and we're not getting anywhere. But even to come up with a date or what type of a meeting we want. So I mean, we need to focus on what we want, how we want to approach this. So if there's we want to expand on the motion to schedule a meeting, let's pick a date and a time. We'll see if the assembly agrees with it.
Sure.
Or either that or remember Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can pick a date for February 11th for a work session to talk about solid waste and recycling in Petersburg. That's my motion, I guess.
Okay, so I guess we pick the date, let's pick a time. Director, God, I would bring it to
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, sorry, yeah. Remember,
I won't be in town the 11th through the 14th of
you'll be
February.
at Southeast Conference, I'm
Yeah.
guessing. Right, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that input.
Yep.
So, Mr. Mayor, so will we have members of the Assembly and the Director here on the 19th of February?
I know member Lynn and the manager and myself will be in Juneau. And Taylor, member Norheim will be more than likely crabbing.
So, in an effort to find a date that we can have a few people here, how about February 6th, which is a Wednesday?
Okay, so being a weekday, what do we want that? I think any of these should be, for public participation, be scheduled in the evening, so just to put a time on it. Member Mucci?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we've scheduled the one with on February 4th, at 6:30, I guess, or January 30th at 6:30, so maybe we could try for 6:30 again?
Sure. So that's the date and the time that we're going to be voting on to have this meeting. And the way I'm reading this is we're going to have the touch on all three of them.
Mr. Mayor?
Member Mucci?
Yeah, my intent was just to focus on solid waste and recycling. I agree that they're all pretty big items, but cutting them down to just two meetings. The first one on February 4th dealing with, February 6th dealing with solid waste and recycling. That's my intent.
Okay, so we have a potential date of February 6th and a time of 6:30 p.m. And that's going to be a meeting pertaining to a work session pertaining to solid waste and recycling. So if the Assembly wants to have that, vote yes, and if you don't, vote no. And will the clerk call the roll?
Okay, Bob?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Are you,
Sorry, is that Taylor?
yes, it is Taylor.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, so that's scheduled, and we didn't put a time limit on it, but I don't think meetings are very productive after one or two topics after like an hour and a half, so maybe we could, I guess we didn't vote on that, but we just voted on a time. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so with that being handled, that brings us to communications. Is there any communications? Assembly discussion items. We have one that we added, and it is the toll bridge. The discussion based on a testimony that Ren Snyder gave earlier. Any discussion on that? Member Walhitter?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I put this on the agenda so we can at least look at what our liabilities are on this. There's been some suggestions that if we deem this as kind of a liability, that maybe we need to close it temporarily until we figure out some sort of way of making it safer. I mean, I understand what the intent was when they originally did it, but you know, with this litigious society nowadays, anybody could slip and fall off on that, and they were held liable for it. So, and it is. I'm not sure I don't know what the requirements are for where you need to have a railing, depending on how high off the ground it is, but I don't think you have to be very far off the ground without having to have a railing when it's on public property, or, you know, borough property. So I'm just thinking of the liability issue here.
You know, and then, you know, that you probably have a valid point, but then if you do that, then what do you do with playgrounds and other trails that have, you know, don't have guardrails on a steep bank or something? Where are we going with, you know, closing one using that, I'm not sure. Member Ritchie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I guess through Chandler and Steve, is this something we want to refer to the Friends of the Library to have them look at it, or have you look at it and give us your take on it? I'm just trying to sort out, instead of us just making a decision, does it need to go?
We can't make a decision right now. It's a discussion item anyway.
Jump in on this?
Yeah.
There's a couple of things I could do. I mean, we could call a PEI and have their risk manager come out to visit Petersburg. That won't cost us much, and he can go look at it and tell us thumbs up or thumbs down. Just understand, when we do that, then we are then on the record as saying, and you very well could say, close it, rebuild it, whatever. This is one of these, we've avoided going that route because it's an incredibly popular Petersburg attraction. It's been there for at least a while, and for every time we start to talk about dismantling it or fixing it, people can get very upset at us. It's a question of the day. I mean, we can deal with it internally, but you're likely to hear about it. I mean, I'm not trying to be sarcastic. In other words, if we go that route, I'm pretty sure the risk manager is going to say, it could be safer. In which case, right now, we have no money budgeted for that, and so we'll remove the bridge, which I believe was a Boy Scout project, or
Eagle Scout or
Eagle
whatever
Scout
it was,
project. And, maybe that's the first step. Maybe that's what we need to do, is just have him give us a risk assessment.
Member Stanton Greger?
Are you done, Mr. Manager? I don't want to interrupt you.
I'm done, because I don't know what else to say to dig myself into a deeper hole. I mean, it's just
you're good. The APEI thing, I remember them talking about the playground behind the subdivision. Correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, but I recall some of the feedback they gave us on playgrounds, and it was fairly ludicrous in terms of...
They're going to go to the safest level. I mean, I think, for example, they were concerned that there were no fences built to keep the kids out of the muskeg.
Correct. That was one that struck me as
Correct.
ludicrous.
So, again, I'm fully confident that we will get something. They're very good at what they do, and that's controlling risk. That's their entire focus.
Okay, so I'm remembering that correctly then.
And I can tell you, if they're here, we're also going to probably have them look at the stairs at Eagles Roost, and they're going to say the same thing about that.
Yeah, I just want to go on record and say I have no interest in having them come to town and doing a risk assessment for us. Thanks.
I think that wouldn't be a good idea either. I mean, we've had this discussion that was about something to do with the harbors, and, we could build a bubble over the whole town to protect ourselves, but, I mean, it's... Like I said, first time I was on that trail was last week, and I'll go back. It was pretty enjoyable. It'd be a shame to see it closed down because of safety. You could fall down walking out in the woods.
It's a tough issue. I totally get what everyone's talking about here. I mean, we built a bypass purposely so that people who didn't want to walk on the bridge could go around it. The one thing we haven't done, which I think we are negligent on, which is we probably should put signs up in some fashion and just say, hey, here's the alternate route, and something that says, hey, cross at your own risk type thing. And we can do that. I mean, I just kind of need to hear from the Assembly how you want us to approach this, because if I turn it over to the insurance folks, it's likely to be, I know what I'm going to get.
Member Walter?
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry for speaking out of turn there. But, that was never my intent, was to close it down. I think what I wanted to do is put a little pressure, on maybe, looking at some sort of means in which we could make it a bit safer than it is right now, because as the speaker said earlier, that it's very slippery right now, and with the wet weather we have here, it gets very slippery. Well, I don't want to see much change. Is there some kind of surface that we can put on it so it's not as slippery? Is there a low rail that kind of gets us, I don't know. I'm just trying to decide, which way we should go. Like I said, I don't want to see it go either, because it's kind of fun. But on the other hand, I don't want to also, be pushing this project forward if there's a huge liability sitting out there for us. as a community.
Member Stanton Gregor?
I hope that Friends of Parks and Rec discusses this, and I'd love to hear back from them.
I think that's a good start. Member Lynn?
Well, there's standard designs for fences for trails and trails like those. I mean, you can go online and find them. You could also design take a look at it fairly easy and decide what some idea to make it safer. And then put that out there and see if we have some folks that are willing to take on that project. That's another way to do as part of it.
So I guess this isn't the time for public comment, sorry. And it sounds like this will be, Chandra.
So there's been a lot of discussion over this over the last 6 months. Ren has been she's been working alongside me. We've been discussing it with the Friends of Parks and Rec group. Dieter Close has stepped forward. He was one of the original builders of it, and he's definitely willing to help update the bridge, depending on how a group of people get together and determine it. I think what I would like to know is, and I think the Friends of the Parks and Rec group would like to know, we've got a lot of different options. We could talk with the lawyer. We could talk with the insurance companies. We can go a couple of different routes, but it is a definite high. There's a lot of interest in it from multiple different, and within the Friends and Parks and Rec group, there's different opinions of how we should move forward with it. So we can definitely bring it back to the Friends and Parks and Rec group, but is there a direction within that you guys would like to go? Does that make sense?
Boy, it sounds like a tough topic because if we address, like I hit on earlier, and maybe I'm wrong, but if we address one section of trail, then what's that going to lead to for other hiking places around the community? Member Bucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think signage would be the first thing. I mean, that would be an easy thing. That you're on this Borough trail and you're using it at your own risk. I mean, that would be an easy thing to do, I think.
I liken it to a trail that I could no longer walk, but I did several times when I was younger, which is the trail to the top of Yosemite Falls. And if anybody's ever done that, there's a section of it that you're on a little walkway about this wide with this one metal bar and a 3,000-foot drop straight down. And you kind of sidestep down to a little platform. Trust me, I mean, that's a whole lot more dangerous than the trail bridge. I'm not saying that somebody couldn't get hurt there. So maybe you're right. Maybe we just put some signs up for now, and maybe getting Dieter's ideas. I mean, the guy's a very good architect. Maybe he's got some ideas, and that will give us a better idea of, is there a way to keep the look and feel of it, but make it a little bit safer? So with the Assembly's approval, we'll get some signs posted out there, and we'll talk to Dieter and see what he's got in mind, and maybe kind of mull that about a little bit. I mean, does that help at all?
I mean, really need the Assembly's... Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I meant that more just... No, I really don't, but I'm just...
And we can't...
We're all talking. This is a discussion.
It's not an action item.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just asking, does that sound like a doable plan? I mean, at least...
Can you make the signs look like a skunk cabbage leaf? Or...
I think we can make signs look like just about anything, yeah.
I think that would be a good start, anyway.
I mean, it's a step in the right direction, but,
Yeah. Member Walter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do you think we would have enough time to get maybe Dieter's input, before the next meeting, so we could put this as an action item on the next meeting?
Chandra?
I'll reach out, yeah.
Okay, well, and what kind of action we're going to want to take, who knows?
Well, at that point, then we could then just give them the go-ahead with signs or whatever Dieter
We're going to do that anyway.
They're going to do signs.
Yeah.
They're going to do signs.
Yeah. Okay, so is there any more discussion on this trail bridge topic? If not, that brings us to recognitions. Is there anybody, staff or Assembly? Member Ricci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have two. I want to thank the Power and Light guys for getting out early and restoring the power on Sunday. That was it was nice. It was pretty cold, and when the heaters aren't working, you notice it in a hurry. And I also want to thank the local businesses who are extending credit during the federal government shutdown. I think it's a very nice act of kindness during kind of an unsettling time for a bunch of people in Petersburg, and I think it's very commendable, and I just wanted to thank those businesses. That's all.
All right, good recognitions. Any other recognitions from anybody? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.